We have women who are going for their MRIs and have to pull over to the side of the road because there are sirens. There are women who are in post-op that are rushed down to a basement. These are not normal circumstances.
Welcome to What Came After. I'm your host, Manya Marcus. On What Came After, we'll take a look at the many ways people's lives have changed since the brutal massacre in Israel on October 7th, 2023. We'll be speaking to people around the world to learn how this profound moment in Jewish and global history continues to shift, shape, and change them. To learn more, please visit us at whatcameafter.com. I am so honored to be here. It is April 29th, 2026, Manhattan, New York, here with my guest, Elana Silber. I am in your New York offices. You have a very interesting story, and you're going to tell us all about it, who you are, what you do. I was really fortunate to meet you a few months ago, just before Pesach. I walked into a kosher restaurant in my town, in Skokie, and you were sitting there with a friend. I had just come back from Israel, where I got stuck for 2 weeks of the war, and we started talking and you invited me to this gala and banquet, and suddenly I was thrust into your world and your life. And I'm really glad to be here to hear more about it since I was such a newbie at the time. Please introduce yourself, tell us who you are and what it is you do here.
Okay, my name is Elana Silber, and I really want to you start with the date, but I want to start with the thank you. It's a really special opportunity for me to be a guest on your podcast to really reach women, men, and families all across the world that can benefit from the organization that I've been dedicated to for the last 20 plus years. So really thank you for the opportunity. The organization of which I'm the CEO is Sharsheret, and it's the Jewish breast cancer and ovarian cancer organization here in the United States and also in Israel. Basically, Sharsheret provides everything you would need when you're facing a breast cancer diagnosis or a genetic mutation that leads to cancer that your doctors don't. We don't do anything medical, but there's a lot that happens in your life that is not medical that really needs to be addressed so that you can achieve these healthy outcomes that we all want when we're diagnosed with a serious illness or we have a strong susceptibility to developing this disease. So that's what Sharsheret is, and I am the CEO, and I have been there for 23 years. Just when it was a startup getting off the ground back in 2001. I was a volunteer in 2002, and I came on staff in 2003, and I just never left.
How did you come to volunteer for it? Because if I'm not mistaken, you yourself are not a survivor of
So that's the
cancer.
number one question, right? You see advocacy organizations, you see health organizations, and the assumption is the reason you're so passionate about it is because you yourself or someone went through it. It happens to be that I started as a volunteer because the founder, who was a young Jewish woman, her name was Sharsheret. She was 28 years old. She was otherwise healthy. One day she saw a sliver of a shadow on her breast and called a breast surgeon. And she had already seen a breast surgeon a couple of times because she had seen other things, and it turned out to be nothing. But this time, she ended up being diagnosed with breast cancer at 28. She was a rising attorney. She was clerking for Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Oh, wow.
She had 2 young children.
Wow.
And she really turned to the Jewish community and the cancer community and couldn't find support for herself as a active young Jewish mother and professional. There were plenty of offers to talk to grandmothers and aunts, but no one really to discuss the issues that she was grappling with, raising a family, balancing career and cancer, facing a whole life ahead of her, and how was she going to manage that? Until she was introduced to another young woman who was 6 months ahead of her and got her through it. And at that point, she said, I can't be the only 2 young Jewish women out there or active Jewish women. We need to start an organization. And if we can help 5 women a year, that's success. Fast forward, Sharsheret's helped over 40,000 women with breast cancer and now also ovarian cancer, or those who carry mutation. And we'll talk a little bit about mutations that lead to breast cancer and ovarian cancer, like BRCA, like CHEK2. BRCA is BRCA, and that's the most common, but there's other ones like CHEK2 and PALB2 and ATM, and the genetics field is growing by leaps and bounds. So there were likely other additional mutations that can increase risk. But anyway, back to the story. So Rochelle starts this organization. She lives in my hometown, which is Teaneck, New Jersey, and she's coming to speak at the local synagogue. And when I heard her speak, I was compelled to get involved because what she said was breast cancer is not just a Jewish woman's issue. It's a Jewish family issue. It's a Jewish community issue. And I sat there and I said, as a Jewish woman, how could I not get involved? So I started as a volunteer. We started to do programs together. And I had just moved back I was living in London for a few years. We came back and I was looking for some meaningful work. I have an MBA in healthcare and I'm pretty connected in the Jewish community to things that you kind of need to build a healthcare organization.
To do this specific work,
fundraising and programs. And she said, do you want to work professionally? And I said, yeah, I think I really do. And I was so moved by the stories of the women that we connected with. And it was really a startup because the women would tell us what they need and then we would develop the programs. It was just the founder and myself, and started to grow, and women were calling and then men were calling because it's not only a women's issue. And I've been there for 23 years and I've seen the organization grow from this handful of volunteers to this national and now global movement because now we're in Israel.
So let's talk about the transition from national to global, because I think that's where the October 7th piece really does come in. Over the course of the conversation that we had initially when I ran into you, I think you may have said something like, unfortunately, cancer doesn't stop happening when there's a war. And there's this whole piece about October 7th and opening the office in Israel. Could you share a little bit about that with us?
Yeah. Sometimes you think about these things and you're like, is it Bashert? Is it fate? Is it karma? I don't know what it was. But since, I guess, even before COVID, which was another
Major
world-changing,
world event,
right?
Yeah.
We used to look at our tagline that Sharsheret is the Jewish breast cancer and ovarian cancer organization. Where are the Jews? They're all over the world, but the bulk of the Jews are in the U.S. and Israel.
Mm-hmm.
If we are going to be the Jewish breast cancer and ovarian cancer organization, we have to be where the Jewish people are.
Right.
And so it was a dream of mine to be able to bring the services that we offer in the U.S. to Israel. In addition, there were women and men who are living in Israel who are recent Olim over the last 20 years. So recent immigrants from the U.S. who were familiar with Sharsheret's free services for breast cancer and ovarian cancer, psychosocial support, emotional support, financial assistance, education, information, kits to help them get through surgeries. And they said, why do I have to call my cousin who lives in Dallas to get stuff that I need here in Israel? So we thought, okay, we really want to investigate and see if this is something we can do in Israel too.
And you're saying this was a pre-COVID
This was
dream of yours.
pre-COVID, and we were meeting with people, and there was a lot of enthusiasm, and we were kind of like testing the waters. Like, do people in Israel who are dealing with cancer, is this a helpful service to them? Is it helpful for them to get peer support? Is it helpful for them to have a mental health counselor, a genetic counselor on their speed dial? The answer was yes. And then COVID hit. Nobody was leaving their house. We couldn't even go to the country. We couldn't leave New Jersey.
Which is unfortunate, right?
Yeah.
Because during COVID, people still needed to get chemo. They still
and we
needed
were
to
seeing
go
that.
places,
We were so active here in the U.S.
but
during
you
COVID.
were unable to
So we
launch
couldn't
there.
move forward.
Yeah.
So we took a break, and then COVID calmed down. We actually got an email from a woman in Israel. Her name is Leora, a young mom who has a BRCA gene mutation, had lived in the U.S. and moved to Israel. And she had made a film about her experience. She had done prophylactic surgeries so she wouldn't get cancer. And she randomly emailed and said, have you thought about opening in Israel?
Now, what year
This is 2021 or 2022.
Okay.
Maybe. So she knew Sharsheret. She had used Sharsheret somewhat, but she sent it to the general email box thinking she'll never hear back. And our office, very efficient, saw this email come in and they sent it to me, and they knew that I had this passion to helping people in Israel also, and the families that had half here and half in Israel. We could do so much more. So within 20 minutes of her sending this email, I said, email her back and say, we want to set up a call. And she said, nobody ever answers me.
By the way, this is very consistent in my experience with you. I think I knew you 5 minutes, like, let's set this up. So you pounce.
I just said, Lara, like, yes, we do want to start something in Israel.
Right.
But so Leora Tenenbaum, she said she was laughing. She said, I can't believe I got this email. We set up a call. From here to there, we ended up talking for months on end and really talking about how we can do this in Israel. We had to get people to meet with us. We had to get women with cancer to talk about what their needs were, to evaluate what Sharsheret was doing in the U.S., what could be translated. And there was such a positive reaction and the need for it. We know when we told people that we would be coming to Israel and we would be providing free counseling and everything was free. And they kept saying, no, really, like everything's free. And it's not specifically to one hospital. We said, no, this is open to everybody in the country. I mean, Anglos right now, because we had to limit it somehow because the incidence of breast cancer, 1 in 8 women is going to be diagnosed with breast cancer and 1 in 90 will get ovarian cancer. So you can imagine the numbers are huge, but we have English language is our first. We're American. So English-speaking people in Israel could benefit from Sharsheret if we had the services on the ground there. So we worked hard, and she's a superstar, this Leora, and she lives in Israel. And thank God for the wonderful technology. When it works, it works. So we're working back and forth. And so we said, okay, October 2023, we are going to have 16 meetings, and this one could do funding, and this one is a doctor, and this one is a researcher, and this one had cancer, and everybody's excited about Sharsheret coming.
16 meetings in October 2023, and it's going to happen.
And it's going to be amazing. Like everyone's like, you can't fundraise in Israel. Oh, these people had capacity and they were willing to invest in this. And we were like, what could go wrong? It was like the perfect plan. We had a team that was incredible. We had the backing of Sharsheret, an organization that has been growing and strengthening for the last 20 years. We had people on the ground who were yearning for us to come.
Before you go further, I just want to say that it's not a situation where you can just copy what you're doing here and paste there. For people who don't know, the medical system is really different. It's not a perfect copy of what we have here. So you guys put a lot of work into figuring out how to make this happen.
Yeah. And the culture. That is also
right.
one of the characteristics of Sharsheret. Because honestly, people think breast cancer is one disease. It's actually not. Every single person has a different kind of breast cancer. There are similarities, common issues, concerns. But at the end of the day, what we're facing in 2026 is personalized medicine. So everybody's individualized, and that's Sharsheret's expertise. We make sure that we provide you with the services that are good for you. And it's not as if we try to fit you into our programs. Our programs are adapted to fit what you're going through at your stage of life, your stage of cancer, and what you need.
So that works here in our very individualistic, individual-focused society. What were the potential cultural challenges with Israel?
So a lot of it is in Israel. When you are diagnosed with breast cancer, it's very matter of fact. You have breast cancer is what you need to do. And they don't spend as much time focusing on the emotional impact. And that's a very American cultural thing. And honestly, I think people were craving it, especially people who came from America and were used to that. And they heard that, why can't we have that there? So I think that that's it. Also, having everything brought to you, everything that Sharsheret does is beautiful. Everything is top of the line.
You mean aesthetically? Like you really
like this is not a pretty time in life. Like we're not going to sugarcoat it. Having cancer is not pretty. What it does to your body, what it does to your mind, what it does to everything, and the treatments and going to the hospital. But Sharsheret, the materials we give, the kits that we provide before you go to surgery, when you're going through chemotherapy, everything's beautiful. Everything is with feeling and sensitivity. And it's not to say that Israelis don't have sensitivity, but there is also a limit to what can be offered. And having the resources and the excess of things that we have in the US, like the easy accessibility to get things. I mean, you think about like Amazon, you can get it within an hour here. Things there take more time. And we had to bring the beautiful things, but also we had to understand what are people going through on the ground here? Like you said, the medical system is different. And how can you get the doctors that you need to get to? And certain procedures that are covered in the US are not covered there. And how do we know that the medical care that we're having, how does it shape up compared to the US? So we had to understand that and also understand the system. But culturally, what do women want and when do they want it? And how are men focused on this, and what's the level of education and how much information is already out there and how many organizations. We were also partnering with organizations. There are a lot of organizations that are doing good work, but there's no one comprehensive that's going to serve women of all religious backgrounds and men and every stage of cancer and every location. So all this was stuff that we had to learn. So it wasn't a carbon copy. And how much do we share in Hebrew? And the resources that we provide in the US don't necessarily provide resources in Israel. And who do we partner with? Because you can't do this alone. So all that had to be adapted, but we were excited to do it and we were committed. And Sharsheret's board of directors was, I would say, pretty into it. there's still so much work that we have to do in the US. There are 7 million Jews here, and then we haven't even probably scratched the surface. There's so many more that we can be helping. So there was a little hesitancy. Do we have the capacity to go into Israel? So they were supportive, but I would say to an extent. But I was super excited, So,
and you have family in Israel, correct?
I do. I have a son who's living there, a son and wife and a couple of grandchildren. I have cousins there. I mean, it's hard to find someone today who doesn't have relatives there. My nephews are there with their families. And
I have no relatives there.
You have no one?
No.
If you sit long enough, you will. You have
That's
to.
true. That's true. I've discovered third, fourth, fifth, cousins that, but
no,
you're
I
right.
have direct. Like I have 3 nephews that are living there. I have a son and they all have families. I have cousins that I'm very close to.
And that's a very common sort of layout, right? Of so many people there, so many people here, and such connection despite the distance.
Right. And I think that's also like, we said the name is Sharsheret, but for especially if those who don't speak Hebrew, which, by the way, Sharsheret is a great name in Israel because it's a Hebrew word and it's the Hebrew word for chain. And it symbolizes the connections that we make. And I think when you're talking about a cancer diagnosis that runs in families, whether it's because of genetic mutation or just it has a family history, we're all connected. And so there are families that have chains of family here and family there. Right. And so these diseases, it's really important, and that's what I'm going to say on this call, is know your family history. We weren't so fortunate with the Holocaust to go back more than 4 generations, but now that we're going towards 80 years post-Holocaust, we can go back if people talk about their cancers. And it's really important because as much as there's genetic testing, knowing your family history is also critical. And there are things that people can do today to protect their health, and they don't have to wait for cancer. And that's what we're educating in Israel.
Preventative care, right?
Preventative care, sure. And screenings and information, or diagnosing early when it can be cured. And that's also a very important point. And when we're dealing with what's going on in the world right now, and we're talking about literally about making sure that the Jewish people are around forever, for generations, as we have been, health is critical. And Jewish women's health, we need Jewish women to have Jewish babies, to have Jewish families, and to continue the lineage for years to come. So despite whatever else is going on in the world, we need to have healthy people.
I like that, how macro that is. That is a really bird's eye view.
It's an existential threat. And when you're talking about it, and that's what brings us to October of 2023.
Yes,
right?
Let's get back to this because it's kind of suspenseful what's going to happen with these meetings.
So I'm excited. I have my flight. You could pick your flight then, right? You could go United. You can go El Al.
Any airline.
Any time of day. You could go, you can, upgrade a little bit. It's not so crazy. I had all my meetings and everything was set. All my materials, it was all lined up. Everybody was prepared.
So you were going to go after Chagim.
Yeah,
so
right after Chagim. I think it was probably maybe like the middle of the month I was going, and it would happen to be Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So it's trending. Like all the stars were aligning. We have a very good feeling about this and very excited. And then October 7th. And everything stopped. How could we go to Israel? First of all, we couldn't get there, but how could we go there and talk about this when literally all the boys are going to the front line? The women are home alone. Who is going to even be available for a meeting? Who can talk about anything else? Everything that was going on in the U.S. was, how can we help our family, our friends in Israel? How do we address this? What is going on? And not to mention just the shock value. And then to introduce cancer, it just didn't seem, it would fall on deaf ears. Even here, every single person was affected. Everybody knew somebody. There was nothing else you could think about. So we said, okay, that's it. It's not going to happen. And cancer has to be put on hold. How are we to think that cancer can be put on hold? Right. How could we think that? And all of a sudden, I would say by October 20th, looking on Instagram, I see, or maybe my niece sent it to me. She lives in Beit Shemesh, and someone posted, October's still Breast Cancer Awareness Month. We need to talk about our health. And we started to hear through the grapevine that women were saying, I had gone for a test right before, a woman who knew that she had a BRCA mutation right before Sukkot, before the holiday. She had gone for testing and was scheduled to go in for prophylactic mastectomy, but they found cancer. So she said that she was working in the police force. She would not have gone to her appointment after October 7th. She happened to know before. But once October 7th happened, people were stopping to go for appointments. And she said she still had to go for her appointment. But if she hadn't, she would have been called up. And who knows where she would have been today, because her cancer could have progressed or anything. So we were seeing that women weren't going to appointments. Many of the men were on the front lines. So here they were.
And some of them had died. There were widows who were now dealing with cancer on their own, I'm sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And a lot of them have children.
Right.
And who's taking care of the kids. And active treatments were stopped. And people, the whole world stopped. But then people realized that it actually can't. Like, we can't stop cancer. And the mental health crisis that was brought on by October 7th created a tremendous shortage in Israel of professionals who can provide, and the mental health that is so critical, which we talked about earlier, in a healthy outcome to a physical illness. It's so much, it goes hand in hand, mental and physical. And people were saying if Sharsheret could provide mental health counseling in this country for women and men who are facing cancer, that could alleviate a lot of the stress. And I don't know who to talk to, because women said, I can't call my friend. She's already stressed, and now I'm going to tell her that I have cancer.
Evaporated.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like, I think.
Yeah. And you didn't want to burden someone. Like, they had their own problems. And then who do you talk to? But there was also, post-October 7th, there was very clear, we don't want to necessarily speak to mental health professionals in America. We'd like mental professionals here because you have to be here to understand what we're going through. And that's when we started to say, wait a second, we have this whole plan. I think we should start Sharsheret in Israel despite everything that's going on.
When was this statement made? Was it already by October 20th, or was it a while after that?
Probably the end of November, like a month later. And by January, flights were going. Everything was limited, but they said, do you think you can start small? Do you think? And I said, do you think we can? Because you're in Israel. Right. You tell me.
Right.
And I went in January
of 2024.
And we said, look, our expectations are low. Like, whatever we can do, we'll start small. And we help a few people. And it kind of reminds us of like
the
years
very
ago.
Early
like,
story
we only
of
help 5 people.
Sharsheret.
But then the response was overwhelmingly positive.
I want to hear all about this, but I also want to sort of amplify these enormous challenges that arise. Suddenly, nobody knows if it's appropriate to be talking about cancer when it just feels like the whole country is bleeding and there's major crisis. But also the people who are dealing with no longer have the supports that they had relied on. I think there's also this piece that's worth talking about, which is that fundraising as a Jewish organization must have become more challenging because everybody wanted to support the war effort, which was so dire. And you guys provide an enormous amount of free services that isn't free to you, right? That you need to fundraise. Is that?
Yeah. So that was the plan, that originally all the money that we would be spending in Israel should be raised in Israel. It should not take away from the fundraising, because we still need to fundraise in the U.S. We have a $10.5 million budget. So the plan was to raise it all in Israel. But then we're like, how could we do that? People are providing stuff for the army, and
people have lost their homes. They're in hotels. It's not the time, right?
There have been some funders in Israel, especially families that were hard hit by cancer, and understood firsthand that cancer doesn't stop even during a war. And they segmented some of their shekels for investing in Sharsheret even during a war, because they understood it. And we also expanded our model that people in the U.S. who are very much in support of Israel and also of Sharsheret could support Sharsheret's efforts in Israel. But it wasn't to take away from what they were doing in the U.S. on top. So if someone was a $25,000 annual donor in the U.S., there were a couple that came on and said, you know what, I'm very compelled to give more right now, especially to women in Israel who are bearing a lot of the brunt of the beyond the army, even though there are a lot of women in the army too. I mean, we're dealing with women who are in the army and they can't get out to get their appointments. And so we made the case that was very clear that people in the U.S. can help women in Israel now through Sharsheret. And so there was some interest. So we were able to raise enough money to provide the services in Israel even during the war. And we are very careful with how we spend our money, and we are very responsible, and we try to do everything with an eye on how to keep the costs somewhat normal, without getting out of control. And we were able to do it. I mean, each year comes a new challenge, but there was a foundation in Israel that came in that's anonymous that has been tremendously helpful. That was one foundation, and another person has invested. So we're able to make the budget. But yeah, fundraising, I mean, and we'll talk about post October 7th, because it seems that every few months there's a new challenge because of new incidents and new events that keep rising.
You mean in Israel, like
Yes.
in terms of the war?
In war, there was a 12-day war. Everyone thought that was so long. And then
50-day war.
I
And
know,
now,
and
who
it's
knows
like-
what's around the corner? Let me ask you, on October 7th, my understanding is that you are an observant Jew. So
Yeah.
your phone was off. Very interested to hear about your sort of personal story of
Yeah.
October 7th, how you found out, what it felt like for you personally, and also how quickly you understood that it was going to have a major impact on Sharsheret and your work.
I am observant, and I went to synagogue that morning early. I like to go to the earlier minyan, the early
It's called
service.
Hashkama.
Hashkama. And I say Yisker, the memorial service for my mother, who passed away many years ago, over 20 years ago. So I went to synagogue early, and my husband goes to the later service. He walked in and he called me out and he said, Elana, I think there was a terrorist attack. People in synagogue, there's a security guards who have phones who are not Jewish. And he said, I think there was a big terrorist attack in Israel, and I think they kidnapped like 300 people. And I said, no, they didn't kidnap. What do you mean? 3 people, 30 people, 300? I'm like, no. He's like, no, I think it's really bad. And you're looking around and half the people have heard and half people haven't. It's a very Twilight Zone feeling. And you can't just normally, if it was on a weekday, you just open your phone and but nobody was holding phones, but they kept going to the security guards in the synagogue.
And just to remind people, this is Simchat Torah, right? This is a really joyful day on the Jewish calendar. So if some people know there's been a horrible terror attack, that's a very different energy than people who are simply enjoying the holiday at this point.
Right. And it was early in the morning, but this was, I guess, like 7:30 a.m. New York time. It was just like the shock value. And it's like you're sitting there and you're thinking, no, that doesn't happen. A big terrorist attack like that. And I think everyone was on edge. And then the rabbi came in a little while later to make an announcement. But again, everything was very sketchy. Like, I think the information was not coming in so quickly or clearly. And people were hearing from family members. I did not hear from my son. He did not call me that day. And I wouldn't have had my phone on anyway. We still have a land phone, but I don't know if it really works. But I would have, some people heard from family members there, even observant people, because this is a life and death situation. And so we were picking up information here and there. And it was just probably the shock and the fear, because I think people didn't even know. Like, I know I had a cousin who they didn't even know, were the terrorists still around for a day later? Like, where are they? Were they hiding in people's sukkot? There was in one of the neighborhoods where my cousin lives, they said, you need to take your sukkah down immediately because we don't know if terrorists are roaming the country and they could be hiding in the sukkahs. It was so surreal. And you're so far away because you're in the US. And then you hear that your neighbor's daughter-in-law was at the festival. The stories coming in the truth is they were all real. They were all true, but in bits and pieces. It was a very, very strange time, very upsetting and scary. And also you feel a little bit like you're so far away also, and can imagine the whole country on edge. And here we are 6,000 miles away. But I want everyone to know everyone's hearts and minds and prayers were 100%. It wasn't as if anyone wasn't thinking about it every second of that day and the next day, and it continued.
At what point did you think to yourself, this might have a big impact at Sharsheret? What's happening in Israel might mean that this isn't going to happen the way we had planned.
So I think, honestly, maybe because it was the holiday, Sharsheret wasn't my first thought. It really was like, is my family going to be okay? And are my friends and all those men and women who are in the army? Are they helping? And all these innocent people, like, I think I couldn't even go to Sharsheret. It was really thinking about individual people. Are they going to be alive? What is going on? And is this going to continue? And then probably when you go back to work, whatever the day was, I guess it maybe was, I don't know what day of the week we went back to work. Was it Monday? I don't remember. And then you realize, wait a second, we're supposed to be working on going to Israel. And I was like, made a call. The first thing we did was put on our website, literally the second we said Havdalah, the service that ends the holiday, I said, you put on Sharsheret's website, we stand with Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a question, well, we're thinking, do you think that's controversial? And
People asked you that?
Yeah. I was like, I don't care. This is not a controversy.
I'm surprised that was asked in a specifically, explicitly Jewish organization.
The Jewish community is very broad. And I think that people who could maybe think it's a political statement, for us, it's not. And so we immediately put on our website, we stand with Israel. And if anyone had a problem with that, then there are other organizations they can go to. But it was very important to us. It was on our hearts and our minds, and we put it out there. It was embedded into our logo. We stand with Israel on any digital pieces that we had, any social media on the website, and on every email that went out, because we also cut back on our programming here to address what's going on with our brothers and sisters in Israel. There was a message on every email. We tempered down celebrations and things like that. Everyone was so heartbroken and so distressed. So it affected the work that we did here as well. And in Israel, the plan, a lot of what we were doing, not only do we provide this one-on-one support for women and men who are going through cancer, we also do a lot of outreach and education. We go into communities, that's our style, and we talk about the risks for cancer, because the Jewish community is at increased hereditary risk for cancer. For example, 1 in 40 Jews of Ashkenazi descent carries a BRCA gene mutation as compared to 1 in 400 or 500 in the general population. So Jewish families are at 10 times greater risk. And like we said, you can do things to prevent cancer. So we need to get that statistic out there. We need to remind people in the community to go for screenings, learn their family history. And without that, people are getting diagnosed, and not to mention that now appointments were being pushed off, people were busy, and you really physically need someone to remind you to do it, or you're not going to do it. You are busy. You are either on the front line, or you're manning the house at home, or womaning the house at home. You're out there doing things so that the army is fully stocked with everything they need. I mean, the frenzy and everything. And we know traditionally women's health tends to go at the bottom of the list. Women are guilty of always trying to help others, and unfortunately could put their health on the bottom. So just the reminder, people will be like, go for a mammogram. We had a whole blog on our site from someone on our medical board in Israel, and she got a call during October and November to go for her mammogram. And she's like, are you serious? Go for a mammogram? This is what I'm worrying about now. And then she said, you know what? I have to go for a mammogram. So it doesn't diminish the importance and the amount of time you're investing in other things, but you do have to carve out time for your health, and that's important.
So it seems like a lot of the focus of what Sharsheret does is psychosocial support, emotional support. But one of the things that was very powerful for me when I went to the gala 2 months ago,
I think it was March. So maybe last month,
Okay.
I think, yeah.
Last month. But I believe that the founder, Rochelle, I think she passed away, right, from cancer?
So she passed away 11 years ago from breast cancer, but we still follow her vision. And she probably could not have imagined the way Sharsheret has grown. Her son is on the board of directors, and he's a young professional. So he's carrying on her legacy, but she lost her life to breast cancer, and it was distressing and it was hard. But in the end, I think what was important to tell the community is that her story was very individual, and Sharsheret is the story of the thousands of women who benefit from her vision and her legacy. And most women at Sharsheret are doing well. So
Yes.
People always say, is it a sad place to work? And well, it's a serious topic and we have our hard days. Most women and men are doing well. And even in the throes of their surgeries and their treatments, they want to help others. And that's what Sharsheret is all about, taking an experience that you've had and helping others. We have a peer support network with over 40,000 people. And our social workers and genetic counselors speak to hundreds of women and men and can share those experiences with other people, extending the Sharsheret, the chain. That's another thing. There is a shortage of genetic counselors in Israel. In Israel right now, for women, it's free to get testing for BRCA, for breast cancer gene mutations. And there's a challenge because there aren't so many genetic counselors. And it's really important when you go for genetic testing to have someone explain to you the results, because it affects you, it affects your family, and there's no one answer of what you need to do next. So Sharsheret is also providing genetic counseling to women so that they can understand the test, what it means, and their results, and what the next steps, and help them build a medical team so that there are things they can do today to protect their health.
What you're saying is amazing. And it was definitely what I walked away from the event feeling and thinking, was that this is predominantly an organization of people who support other people who end up doing well, where their breast cancer journey defines a particular period of time. There was a woman who spoke who had done numerous marathons, right? And she had done one very, very recently post-cancer. And it was like, also, breast cancer is not a death sentence. It just isn't. It maybe used to be, but it's changed a lot. But the question that I have is really, even if 1,000 people do well and one person doesn't make it, it's heavy and it's sad and it's hard. And you seem to be managing it pretty well. You're focused on the positive. Then we throw geopolitical existential crisis onto the Jewish people, and you're still getting up in the morning and figuring out how to keep this moving forward. I guess what I'm asking is, what are you doing to support yourself when there's so many things in your life right now that are important, but also hard?
I do think, and we have a team of social workers that speak to one woman and one man, one after the other, and it's hard because these people are going through hard times. So there is a lot of peer support, even within professionals. And I encourage people to take advantage of that in whatever difficult professions they're in. But our team also, in particular, have peer mentors that can help them through these difficult times. And then for me personally, I don't speak to women on a daily basis who are going through cancer, but I actually, now that I think about it, I do speak to about 4 or 5. It's hard, but I feel like we're doing so much good. So it's very strengthening for you to be able to provide something helpful to someone who's going through a hard time. And I really try to latch onto that. So even someone will say, like, I called Sharsheret and I didn't really, use them so much, but they told me that a lot of women use this doctor. And they also told me that I don't have to worry so much about this, that they know someone who did that. And that got me through the day. And I try to grab onto that and say, what else can we do? What else can we do to be helpful? And by being helpful, it gives me the strength to continue. But I'm not going to tell you that it's not sad at times,
Sure.
but overall it's positive. And losing Rochelle again it was devastating. But number one, she knew she had been living with stage 4 cancer for a while, which now women who are living with stage 4 cancer are living even longer. And there's so much research coming out, and there's so many more options every year, specifically in breast cancer. But for myself, I'm a workaholic. So even despite whatever work it is, I think I'd probably throw myself in. But I'm inspired by how incredibly strong these people are, even in their most vulnerable moments and then they get to the other side. And then there's this whole movement of Sharsheret, of survivorship. And so many women attach themselves to Sharsheret beyond their diagnosis. Like you said, it's a finite time and then they move on. But what I'm seeing is, while maybe cancer doesn't define you, it is an experience that affects you. And it is very strengthening to be part of an organization or a movement where there's so many people who've been through it, and you have a way to give back. You have a vehicle to give back. You can help someone one-on-one, but when you come to Sharsheret as a survivor and you can help thousands of women, like when you at the gala that you went to in Chicago and someone gets up there and shares her speech and shares some information, you're helping all those people in their room, right? Every single person in that room, it's touched by breast cancer or ovarian cancer. There isn't a woman who's hopefully going to turn 40. She's going to go for a mammogram. So I feel that that's where I get my self-care, is let me focus on how I could help more. It also makes me stay up at night, which is probably not such great self-care, but always motivates us to do more because we just want to help more people and we just want to do more. So I'm always listening and what does this person want? How can we get this for them? And at the end of the day, we can't cure cancer, but we can improve quality of life, which is really a critical component of a healthy outcome.
It's interesting because I've spoken to rabbis on 3 continents for the show, and I often say, what is a theological response to October 7th? And 90% of the time I'm told, I don't care. What do you mean, what is the theological response? The Jewish response is, what can I do? And I think that's what you're describing, right? The therapeutic value of doing something, doing a lot of things in this case. So tell us what ended up happening with your offices, your location in Israel, and where things stand now.
Where are we now in 2026? So it's been,
I think so.
oh, I don't know. We were when we started this. I don't know. It's been a roller coaster. It has been a roller coaster with many more ups than downs for Sharsheret, but not for the world. We started out very strong with these outreach and education events where we would go into local communities and educate
In
the
Israel.
community in Israel.
Starting at when did this begin?
First, I think the kickoff was May of 2024. We had over 100 people in Ra'anana watch a video, hear from experts in the field and women affected, and the response was through the roof. And so not only was everyone very excited that it was an opportunity to bring people together, also to help other people, because this concept, if I go to a Sharsheret event, I'll be helping. But people started to ask questions and they said, in my family, we have this, and approaching us and started to use our services, or I have an appointment coming up. I brought my friend. Because when you go to these events, you don't have to declare I have cancer or I have a mutation. You're coming to hear about general education, but then you start to pay attention when it starts to affect you personally. And then you have an opportunity to talk to like Leora, who is a mental health professional. And we have other counselors who are there. And you can start to have these important conversations and then take down their number, take down their email, WhatsApp. After every event, we have multiple people reaching out for themselves or someone they love. They need help. We need help building our medical team. We need help understanding what my options are. I need help dealing with my children. I need help. How do I get ready for surgery? There was one woman who, maybe it was during the 12-day war, and she found out that she had to go in for a mastectomy. And our team, Leora, checked on her a couple of days before and said, are you ready? She's like, I don't really know anything. So Leora hand-delivered her a mastectomy kit which has helpful resources and also tips from other women who have been there. And she was prepared and she was ready. And that's where I think it was important. So
And was the procedure done in these kind of underground?
Yes, especially in this
parking
last
lot?
war. I mean, we have women who are going for their MRIs and have to pull over to the side of the road because there are sirens. There are women who are in post-op that are rushed down to a basement. I mean, these are not normal circumstances. Kol hakavod to Israel and the medical system for finding ways, while it's not your ideal, but finding ways to do medical procedures and their incredible medical care in temporary sites and always putting health and safety first.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you can't push certain things off. We've seen it time and time again, but it is very, very hard to go to post-op and be brought down to a basement and a siren or on your way to a doctor's appointment. And sometimes your doctor's not in your neighborhood or your treatment. We know that public transportation wasn't so available.
Mm-hmm.
So there was also a financial toxicity associated with war because if a parent is on the front lines, then all of the housekeeping comes to you. You may need extra help, babysitting, housekeeping, transportation. These are all things that impact your ability to get your treatment and your appointments in. We're sending you the reminder, but there's also the logistics, and we can help with that and connect them to organizations that can help provide funding and all these kind of things. And then there have been lulls. There have been quiet periods in between crises where we were able to do 10 or 15 of these educational events. And then every time we finished it, not only did women and men call with questions for themselves, but they were like, I want to bring this to another community. This is life-saving information. And despite what's going on in the world, we want to do it. We even pivoted to doing things online, especially in this last episode, this last war, so that people can get a virtual support group and get the support that they need. So the way Sharsheret works is we will adjust what we do to make sure that people get what they want when they need it.
So you say that you have offices in Jerusalem. Is that correct? Is there office space there?
So we are virtual. A lot in the US. We have virtual offices too.
Mhm.
We have 2 main offices, but physical, but we have virtual offices. So we have professionals on the ground. So one is working out of Ra'anana, one is working out of Tel Aviv, and one is working out of Beit Shemesh.
Okay.
And we have a community advisory board of volunteers who are in all different communities, in Efrat and in Beit Shemesh and in Ra'anana and in Jerusalem, who are our point people on the ground. And we also partner with medical professionals at all the different medical centers all over the country.
It seems to me that you're never really just doing the thing that you're doing. You're probably always thinking about what's next for the organization. Do you have any vision what this is going to look like in the next 6-12 months?
I know. I'd love for life to go back to normal. Can we put that in? Are you capable of getting that?
I can submit a request.
So that would be one thing. For us, this is all still new. We still haven't really had a good run of normal progression, but we're seeing growth. I think last year alone, we helped 150 women and educated probably 1,000. So we're looking at scaling this. What we're doing is good. We want to do more and we want to help more people. I think there'll be a lot more partnering with the medical community. I think that's an opportunity, and hopefully finding ways to reduce the financial burdens that are going on with families in Israel who are touched by cancer. There's going to be a focus on that, and really getting people what they want, more and more people. And down the road, we'd like to help women who are speaking Hebrew. We're launching a new website this summer or this fall, and it's in English, but it will have translation to Hebrew. So we're slowly getting into that. Some of our resources will be translated into Hebrew. We're not yet fully fluent in Hebrew. I can imagine the numbers of people reaching out will grow exponentially, but that's an ultimate goal, because we are happy to help. If a woman is speaking Hebrew and she wants to reach out to us, if she can understand English, we're happy to help. We also speak Hebrew there, so we can be that way, but we want to make it inclusive of everybody.
Elana, I want to thank you so much for sitting with me. This has been really interesting and inspiring stuff, even though it's a hard topic. It's an important one.
Cancer doesn't stop, even in a war. And even more so, I think people really want Sharsheret in Israel now because of the war. They need to have an organized mechanism to remind people, to support people, to encourage people to save their lives when it comes to cancer.
Okay, make sure that you give me the name of the website so that people who are able and inclined can support your work.
Yeah, it's sharsheret.org. So it's SHARSHERET.org. Like I said, in Israel, it's easy. Here in the US, it's hard for people. It's a word they don't understand, they don't know how to spell, and they can't pronounce it. But otherwise, it's a beautiful image of a chain and connections. But sharsheret.org. And you can reach us, our contact information in Israel via WhatsApp, of course, but also by email. We're on social media, Instagram, we're Sharsheret Official. There are a lot of Instagram accounts that say Sharsheret because we're very active on college campuses, and they create their own Instagrams with Sharsheret. We're Sharsheret Official on Instagram, Sharsheret on Facebook, we're on LinkedIn. You can text us. Basically, we are wherever you are.
I think that the Sharsheret social media sphere is really keeping you young.
Is it? This is the thing. We get messages on Instagram saying, and on podcasts. So that's the other thing. I did an interview, and I probably told you this when we met in Chicago. I did an interview on an Instagram with somebody, I don't remember. And I guess it was also coming out of COVID. And I said, like, if you don't remember anything I say today, because, I know I talk a lot and I talk fast and whatever. But the one thing I'm going to say to you today is, make your appointment. If you've pushed off your mammogram or whatever other screening, because again, people have family history might do more than mammograms, and there is no screening for ovarian cancer, FYI, so you really need to know your family history. But if you remember one thing, it's make your appointment. Make your appointment. And so this woman who was listening to this met a colleague of mine one day and said, "Oh, you work at Sharsheret?" And she said, "Yeah." And she said, "Oh, Elana Silber saved my life." And she's like, "You know Elana Silber?" She's like, "No, never met Elana Silber." But she was on this interview on Instagram and said, "The one thing you do." And she said, "You know what? I had already pushed it off a year." And I was like, second year, I think I'll schedule my mammogram. She scheduled that day. She was diagnosed with early stage breast cancer. And she said, "I wouldn't have made the appointment. I didn't feel anything. I didn't see anything. Who knows where I would be today? I'm all better. I'm doing fine." And Elana Silber saved my life. So I guess I'd tell you two things today. Know your family history and go for your screenings. And everything else, you can call us, you can text us, but you can find us wherever you are. But people are seeing us on social media. We want to be wherever you are because no one has time for cancer. So we want to bring it to you wherever you are in an empowering, inspiring, and a way to achieve better health.
Elana, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe to What Came After wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find us online at whatcameafter.com.
ראיתי את עצמי שלמה, הולכת בצעדים יחפים וסמלה לבנה, שוכחת מהמולה, קופצת ראש לעבר, נקייה מכל אשם, מכל תלונה ומחשבה רעה, נקייה מאוד שמצל עליי. ראיתי את עצמי פעם אחת, לא יותר מדי, לא פחות מדי, שלמה בסמלה לבנה, נקייה מהשם. ראיתי את עצמי שלמה, הולכת שקטה מחצים שנונים שחולפים על יד ראשי ומחרשים אוזניים, מחרשים אוזניים.